purpose of fasting was basically to go without something so you could gain more of something else. So they go without food, or they go without water, they go without something so they could basically spend that intentional time when they got hungry saying, okay, God, help me in this situation right here. But was it for like a day or a couple hours? It was for days. Can you imagine fasting? Not just morning, but fasting for days. My stomach would be speaking in tongues. I mean, I wake up in the morning. I literally wake up sometimes because I'm hungry. Not because it's time to get up, not because anything's going on, because I have to go to the bathroom. Just like my stomach says, hey, look, you need more. I say, okay. So I keep a mini fridge next to my bed. It's just the way it is. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. You don't know my life. All right, look, hey, look, I'm trying to be open here. I'm confessing, okay? I'm being real. Anyway, back to the story. Hang on. Back to the story. So he's praying, right? So it says he's praying. So praying before the God of heaven. And I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keeps his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night. For the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. Okay, well, let's talk about what's going on here. Nehemiah starts praying. Yeah, I'm glad you said okay. Nehemiah starts praying, and his prayer starts off great. It's a normal prayer. Actually, we'll go back so you guys can read it along, because it's good to look at God's word. All right, and it says, the God of heaven, you're great and awesome. It's like, God, you're powerful. You're awesome, you know? Like, hey, nobody can flex like you can. God, that's great. That's the normal way to approach God, because God says, hey, look, don't put anything before me, all right? She's like, God, you're awesome. You're powerful. You love your people. In fact, you love them, and your love, it just goes on forever and ever. You even love your truth. You love the fact that you tell us not to lie, not to steal, not to commit adultery, all these different things. God, you are incredible. And so I feel like if I was somebody, an Israelite, listening to that prayer, I'd be like, yeah, God, you're great. You're so powerful. You're so cool. And the prayer keeps going, right? And he says, okay, hey, let your eyes be open and your ears be attentive. He's like, hey, God, pay attention. Listen to me. So I imagine God's just like, well, I was listening before, but okay, you've got my full attention now. What's going on? What's up? What do you have to say? And if you're an Israelite, you'd be like, all right, what's up, man? What you going to say? Come on. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. It's going to help liberate us. Then he says something weird. He says, now I pray before you day and night. So it's not just like he prays this one time and he's just like he shuts up. No. He keeps saying this again and again and again. And he says, the people of Israel, your servants have confessed. We're confessing sins. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. Wait. You just went to God saying, God, you're awesome. You're powerful. Now listen to this part, God. We're sinning. Why would you say that? Why would you bring attention to the fact that we're sinning? But he doesn't just say, hey, we're sinning. Like, it would be interesting or it would be normal if he admitted his own sin. He's like, hey, so look, I talked to this girl I shouldn't have talked to. I kind of cheated this guy in a game of Scrabble. You know, that's just the way it is. And then something like this happened. Like, God, I confess my sins. Hey, my dad did this right here. That's my family's sin, so God, take care of us. But no, Nehemiah doesn't just pray for himself or for his family. He prays for what? Everybody. He's confessing everyone's sins, which I guess is cool. That's what a priest would do, right? Remember the Levitical priests? They would basically cut the blood, or they'd cut the neck, the blood would go everywhere, and they basically confess all the sins on the goats and the goat out, the scapegoat. Like, that was their normal thing. But there's no goat here. Nehemiah's just praying, right? And then he keeps on going. And he says, we've acted very corruptly against you. We haven't kept any of your commandments, and it's just getting worse. It's getting worse. And people are like, all right, look, we've messed up. We know we messed up. We made a bad choice. We know it's our fault we're here. Get over it, Nehemiah. Come on, let's move on. But then Nehemiah says something crazy. This is the part where you probably like, all right, look, man, let's just elbow him in the rib because he's lost his mind. He says, God, remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses. Okay, what was the word? Do you remember? What was the word? What was the word? The word was this right here. If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. Oh, Nehemiah done lost his mind. The people just got back to Jerusalem. Like well, it had been years, but they finally got reestablished in Jerusalem. They're starting up. You know, it's kind of like having their little tents, having their hammocks and that kind of stuff. They're just getting comfortable. And then Nehemiah says, hey, God, look, you're awesome. You're great. You've done huge things in our lives. Thanks so much for that. By the way, listen to this right here. Listen, pay attention. You got this? It's not telephone. Like, I want you to remember what I'm saying right now. Hey, God, we all messed up. We all sinned. Not only that, but God, we sinned. Remember what you said. If we sin, you're going to scatter us. I'd be the point where I'd probably shoot Nehemiah if I was one of the Israelites, because I'd be like, this guy, he's literally gone crazy. He has literally gone off his rocker. Nehemiah, you're supposed to be for us, not against us. Why would you remind God of all the bad things we've done? Why would you remind God of the promise he gave to Moses saying, hey, look, if you decide to go against me, I'll allow you to be captive, held captive, and be captivated by the things that keep your mind from me. Because remember, they went through 400 years of slavery with the Babylonians because of this stuff right here. This thing is shaking a lot. There we go. But, praise God, that wasn't the end of his prayer. You see the comma right there? See, in grammar, we use that to just kind of like little dramatic pause. So I imagine he was breathing. So he's breathing really fast, like, and then he says this. Oh. He said reestablished. There you go. We're done. He said in verse 9, but if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. So what does he say? He's like, hey, God, remember that promise you gave where you said, hey, look, if the people decide to go against me, then I'm going to let them go. Well, part of that promise that God gave was also, hey, but if they make the choice to acknowledge me, if they make the choice to return to me, if they make the choice to admit who I am, then I will gather them from the farthest places of the world, and I will put them in a place where I will establish my name, my kingdom, and I will protect them. And so Nehemiah says in this prayer, hey, look, yeah, God, we know we deserve to be where we are, and we acknowledge the fact that we deserve to be where we are. We confess the fact that the situation that we're in right now is because of us, not because of you, but because of us. But, God, here's the thing. You made a promise to us. You made a covenant with us saying that if we will simply return to you, then you'll return us to where we're supposed to be. Now, here's a question for you. How did people return to God if there was a temple that was destroyed for years, right? Because wasn't the temple the place where God's presence was dwelling with them, right? It makes no sense. So how would the people return to a God if he's just kind of, sitting on a throne actually in heaven? Because they can't physically return, especially if they're in all different parts of the region. So what would it look like to return to God? You remember the Shema we used to talk about, like Shema Yisrael, Elonai Hinu, Elonai Echad? And it was where basically they would say, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one, the Lord is your God. Love the Lord your God with all your what? All your mind, all your heart, or your soul, and all your might, right? So with my mind, when I'm thinking about something, where is my intention? On that thing, right? When my heart is pursuing something, I'm going towards what my heart desires. So what God says in this passage and reminds them in this passage is, hey, look, you're not going to be able to pursue me physically, but you will have to pursue me with your minds and with your hearts. You have to turn away from what you're focused on, and you have to turn to me. But how do they do that? How do you turn from what you're focused on and turn to him? Well, you acknowledge who God is. You acknowledge what God was doing. Like if you look at the Old Testament, especially Deuteronomy, what did Moses do? Well, he literally got up, had the people stand up, and just read everything that God did. All the different things that God did. He talked about how time and time again, God came through, God rescued his people, how the people fell and God rescued them, how the people fell and God rescued them. And he even talks about how God kept his promises, like that promise we see in Genesis chapter 15, where, not Moses, Abram, before he was Abraham, Abram was basically told by God, hey, look, I'm going to do great things to you. And Abram's like, God, what can you do for me? I've got no kids. I've got no son. My name is Father, and I have no kids. It's just ironic. God, it makes no sense. What can you do for me? And God says, hey, look, I'm going to make your children, your offspring, as numerous as the stars, as numerous as the sand. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to guide them. I'm going to do all these great things for them. I'm going to give them a land of their own that's owned by all these different people groups. It was a lot of people groups, like 8 people groups. I'm going to do all these great things. And in fact, I want you to line up all these animals, split them apart. So it's a covenant, right? What a covenant looks like. And so Abram is expecting, okay, I'm going to have to walk down this thing, and if I make sure I do what God has me do, then God will take care of it. Now that's not what happened. See, God, after having Abram, not Abraham yet, Abram split the animals, God, his Spirit of God comes through like a fire through the middle of the animals. And what God shows right there is, look, I'm making a covenant with you, that I'm going to keep my promise, that I'm going to take care of you guys. I'm going to watch over you, and that I'm never going to forsake you. I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to give up on you. I will be patient with you. I will be kind with you. I will show you grace and mercy. That's the commandment that's not the commandment, the covenant that God made. And that's the covenant that Nehemiah was referring to. And he's like, hey, look, God, you've kept your promises so far. You even mentioned in that little conversation right there how the people would be enslaved for 400 years, and then they would leave that place, and they would get all these riches. Egypt, hello. They plundered the land. Literally, the Egyptians gave them all this stuff, just like, here you go. So they realized that, okay, God is doing great things. God has done great things. God's incredible. So what do we need to do? Just acknowledge who God is. That's the simple thing, is acknowledging who God is. Let's go back. But here's a question for you. And we talked about, okay, so confession is like getting real. We even talked about in the song how we need to get real with God. Does it matter? I mean, think about your life right now. If you were to get honest with people, if you were to say, you know, I'm going to stop lying, I'm going to stop hiding the truth, and I'm just going to just not be blunt and belligerent, but I'm just going to be gracious. I can't even say it because I don't do it, but I'm going to be kind and loving and honest at the same time with people. If I'm going to be that person, is it worth it? Does it matter? Does it even do anything? How many of y'all grew up as little kids, and you're not little kids anymore? Some of y'all still little, but how many of y'all grew up and you ever broke something in your house or in the apartment? Sometimes, I broke a lot of things, I'll be honest with you. Broke a lot of things as a kid. There were moments, so many moments in my life growing up where I would break something. Let's say it's a dish, right? Let's say I'm cleaning the dishes, you know, and I'm drying, this is a real story, and I'm drying the glass off, and for some reason I'm drying the glass off and I'm shaking it over a metal sink. Don't do that. That's dumb. So I'm shaking it, and I just happened to just tap the glass so gingerly on the metal sink, and it explodes. And so what do? Well, I clean it all up, and I throw the glass away. I put it in the dumpster outside because Mom's not going to check the dumpster. And then I go about what I'm doing. Little did I know that my mom knows how many glasses she has of her fancy glasses. So, why are you laughing at me? Anyway, let me finish the story. You don't even know what happened. So she asked, and it's just, parents have this way of saying your names, especially when you have siblings that are so fast, but it's so terrifying, because you know that you're in trouble, but you try and play like you have no idea what's going on. So it's like, Akil, Zaki, and Jahi, because that's the order we're born in, Akil, Zaki, and Jahi. But it's almost like there's no breathing, no syllable there. So Akil, Zaki, and Jahi, come downstairs. And that's not how she sounds. She sounds lovely and whatever you want to call it. It's like, yes, ma'am. What's up? What can I do for you? Hello. And she lines us up. It's like, what happened to my glass? Now, we had weeks where we were supposed to wash dishes, right? It was my week. But I was smart. It's like, I don't know. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of times when bad stuff happened at my house or I broke something, I played the just dumb card. Like, I had no idea what's going on. Like, I was like, I've never even seen this before. Like, who are you? I was outside. Like, I wasn't even home. I was at a soccer game because I played soccer a lot. I played as dumb as possible. My parents probably knew because every other time I was so descriptive and I had every single detail. So they probably knew right off the bat. Yeah, they really did. They really did. Every time I lied, they knew right off the bat because I would just act like an idiot. But I was like, I have no idea what happened. And I'm being all just exaggerated and everything. And my sister and brother are just like, it wasn't me. I don't know. And they're starting to cry because, you know, if someone doesn't admit that they did it, we all get a spanking. And I'm sitting there just like, look, it wasn't me. I have no idea what you're talking about. But I had a progression of how I lied. I don't do this anymore. But I would act like I was completely ignorant, right? Like I had no idea what was going on. And then I'd be like, you know what? I don't remember. That might have been me. I might have done that. Like literally, this is how I lied as a kid. It's like I might have done that. I don't remember. What glass was it? What did it look like again? And I'd stay in that area for a little bit, you know. Then my parents knew, like, we got him. It's like it's like a hunter, just like in the scope, just poof. They're like gonna snipe this kid out. And then I would get to the point where I was just like, I did it. It was me. And every time I get a spanking, and my parents every time would say, you know, you wouldn't have been in trouble if you hadn't lied to us. If you, look. I can't say that. I'm being recorded right now, all right? But anyway, and they watch these things. But every time they would say, look, you wouldn't have been in trouble if you hadn't lied to us. We just wanted to know the what? The truth. It's like, that is... Anyway, it's like, okay, that's fine. Now, there were times where I'd break something, and for some, I can't say because I was a Christian, because I don't know what it was. I was just being dumb. But I just confessed. I was like, hey, look, I broke this. Probably because it was too hard to hide. Like, when it's so big that you can't hide it, you got to confess. So I was like, hey, Mom, look, I did this, like falling down the stairs and putting a hole in the wall with my knee. Can't hide that. So It's like, Mom, I broke the wall. She's just like, are you okay? Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's fine. What? I broke part of your house and it's okay? Don't go get the belts? Don't wait till your dad gets home? What is this? What is this? I learned something at some point in life, probably between the ages of like 7 to like 15 or 16, that once you confess, if you're just honest, if you just tell the truth, sometimes it saves you a lot of trouble. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes. Now, I'm saying sometimes because there's always going to be that one moment where you're like, look, man, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. Like when somebody asks you, does this make me look big? Just, I don't know, change the subject. That was his idea, by the way. But in that moment, I realized, okay, confession's not that bad. Being honest isn't that bad. So why was Nehemiah so willing to be honest and say, hey, look, here are all the sins of the people. Here's all the stuff we did. Here's why we messed up so bad. Why? Because he realized, okay, you know what, if I'm willing to confess to God all the things that go on, that have happened, then the repercussion isn't so bad. Because what did God say the repercussion is if they acknowledged who he was? I will gather you from the farthest places. I will protect you. I will give you a sanctuary. I will provide for you. So you mean to tell me, God, you mean to tell me, hold the phone. You mean to tell me, if I admit how much I've messed up, how much I've done all these bad things, how I've gone against you, if I just get real, if I just get raw, open up, say, yeah, here's who Akil is. If I do all these things and acknowledge that you already knew about it, so it's no point really hiding it. Like you knew I was lying. You knew I did all these things. If I just admit what's going on, then you'll take care of me. You'll reestablish me. You'll offer me freedom. God's like, yeah. Yeah. That's all I've asked you to do is to be who you're created to be. To acknowledge who I am, acknowledge who I say you are, and to abide by my laws. And when you break my laws, when you break my commandments, be honest and say, look, God, I've messed up. And I need your help because I can't fix this. And so it leads us to this next question right here. The byproduct of getting real makes getting real worth it. That's what Nehemiah realized. That's what I've realized in my life. That being honest with God is like being honest with myself. It's like saying, okay, and this is something cool that actually Mike mentioned to me. We were talking about a friend, and this guy said, hey, I'm an addict. And I was like, he's not an addict? And then Mike explained it to me because I don't know everything, y'all. Like, Google doesn't tell me everything. It tries, but it doesn't tell me everything. And it explained to me something. It's like, when an addict is recovered, an addict will still say they're an addict because they acknowledge the fact that they've gone through something, that there was a struggle in their life, that they're weak in a certain area, and they don't want to ever go back to that. So they will confess to the fact that, hey, this has occurred. And it makes me wonder, it's like, you know what? Being real, getting real with what we struggle with where we've fallen short, how we've messed up, can actually benefit us. Because instead of living in a lie and saying, I don't have a problem with this, it's not a big deal, everybody else is doing it, it's illegal or it's legal in certain states, or I'll be old enough to do this at a certain age, so why not do it now? Or I'm mature enough to do it, or I can handle it, whatever excuse we might make. Instead of making these excuses for whatever we might be doing, if we just get real with ourselves, it actually benefits us. Because who wants to lie to themselves? I mean, how many of y'all have actually like liars? When you catch a friend in a lie, how many of y'all actually trust that person? But here's the truth. We catch ourselves in lies all the time. I mean, even as a fisherman, I have to have pictures of every fish I catch because sometimes, like a little fish that was this big becomes this big. I was like, yeah, man, it was like this right here, and it fought for 15 minutes. It fought for 2 seconds. I pulled it out of the water. Like, it flew back so far, it actually hit my cooler. But we have the tendency to elaborate, right? And an elaboration is still a lie. It's still false. And here's the problem we have with ourselves. We tend to elaborate who we are, what we've accomplished in our lives. Or we tend to try and diminish some of the bad things we've done, we're doing, or we struggle with. We try to put off who we actually are as either greater than what people see or less than what we actually see because we see ourselves. And God says, look, just get real with me. Just get real. Just open up, get real, and see what I can do with you. But I have a question for you all because I always have questions, right? I'm sorry, grammar. How would your life look if you got real with God? How would your life look if you got real with God? How would it change? Would it change? Now, if it wouldn't change, you were in a great spot because that means you're like, hey, God, look, here's who I am. Here's who you are. Help me to become more of the person you called me to be. Because in all honesty, God, what the world says that I'm supposed to pursue with my life, it's not really worth it. Because the world's thought process and change, it just goes up and forth like a sine and cosine wave. It just changes so much. Hey, God, yeah, I'm sorry. I just made a math reference. I know y'all are like out of that. It's a wave, okay? It's a wave. It just goes up and down like a roller coaster, But God, right here, this right here, hasn't changed. Now, some of the, I almost said religions, not religions. What's it called? No, it's not translations. See, I have the word and I can't think of it now. It is called languages. There it is. Some of the languages have changed. Yeah, right? So simple. Such a simple word. Languages have changed. Like this is written in Korean, it's written in English, it's written in Spanish, it's written in all these different languages. But the words inside, it was written in Hebrew and Arabic and Greek and all these different things. The words inside of it don't change. What God expects from his people doesn't change. What God desires from you will never change. What God wants from you will never change. So the question I want to ask you is, how would your life look if you got real with God? If you said, okay, you know what, God, here's who I am. Here's what's going on in my life. Here are my struggles. Here are my insecurities. Here are my doubts. Here's the things that I boast in. Here's what's going on. Now help me to understand who you've called to be in this situation. Because according to your word, God, you say that I'm someone who's special. When the world says I'm not unique. God, you say that I am one in billions. When the world says that, look, you're just a statistics. You're just a statistic, not plural. God, how can I be who you've called me to be? The only way to be who God's called you to be and remain in that is to get real with God. But first, you got to get real with yourself. You got to actually take a little look introspective, like we talked about last week, a little look inside of, okay, who is Akil? What does Akil struggle with? What does he not struggle with? See, that's what a confession looks like. It's not just saying, God, I've sinned here. I messed up there. I talked to this person. I didn't talk to that person. Or God, I was supposed to share the gospel, but I chose not to because I didn't want to really hang out with those people. I didn't want them to look at me differently. That's not what a confession is. A confession is you just simply saying, here's what's going on. Here's why this is what's going on. So God, help me to have your perspective. Like, how many of y'all like attention? Anybody? Anybody like being noticed? I've realized something that's pretty bad about myself, and I'm really trying to help have God work through this in my life. I love the fact that I walk into a room and know people notice me. And if they don't notice me by sight, I start speaking, and they're just kind of like, you're an interesting-looking, dark-skinned man, and you talk like that right there. Things are weird. You use words that most people don't use. What is going on here? You talk with your hands all the time. What's going on here? Little kids like you. You hold a baby, and babies start to fall asleep on you. You're like, what are you? Who are you? What is going on here? I like it. I like the fact that Akil Mims gets attention from other people. But sometimes, in all honesty, it's a distraction. Sometimes I crave the attention of man or women too much. I lose sight of the fact that God's like, Akil, look, who do I say you are? What am I saying about you? What am I doing in your life? Are you willing to spend time with me? Are you willing to get real with me? But I'm so captivated by the attention and the allure of other people that I lose sight of who my God is and who my God has called me to be. That's a confession. Is it me saying I'm sinning by enjoying the attention of other people? If it distracts me from who God is, then it would be considered a sin. But sometimes it's those gray area little things that pull us from God. Because we think to ourselves, it's not bad. It's okay. It's not a big deal. When God's saying, hey, the root of this issue is a really big deal. The root of this issue is the fact that you feel like you need to be noticed by people because you're not enough. You feel like you'll never be enough. And you know what? I'm not enough. I'll never be enough. I'll never be smart enough to be worthy of being your pastor. I'll never be good enough at Frisbee to actually be able to beat all those teams we go to play at camp. Even though I think I'm really good, I am not enough. Akil Mims is not enough, but the God that I serve is. And that should be good enough for me. That's what it looks like to get real, to be honest and be vulnerable with God. But I believe some of you in here have never made the choice to get real with God, to be vulnerable with God and say, God, here's who I am. I would encourage and challenge you all to take the time to just get real with God. Have a conversation with God. And say, God, look, I don't even know what I'm bringing to the table, but I want you to help me to see who you've created me to be. I want to see the world through your eyes because you see all things. You know all things. And because, God, you can reestablish me. But to be reestablished, we have to admit that we've been unestablished. We have to admit that we're not perfect. We're not the best. We're not complete. We're not whole. There's an issue in our lives. That issue, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, is a sin issue. It's something that we can't overcome. No matter how much we might try, we can't overcome the sin in our lives. We might stop doing one thing, but we tend to fill sin with sin. It's just the way it is. We tend to fill the hole of sin, whatever we're doing that distracts us from God, with something else that will continue to distract us from God. And we'll continue on this perpetual cycle all our lives until we get real with God and we confess the fact that, God, we can't break the cycle on our own. We can't escape the cycle of sin on our own. So, God, reestablish me. Break this shackle, break these chains, because sin has a consequence. And we all know sin's consequence: death. Separation from God forever and ever and ever. It says forever and ever. It's a long time. But why does that matter? Because God is everything that is loving, that is kind, that is patient, that is holy, that is worth your life. God is everything you're created to love and to know. He created you uniquely to have a relationship with you forever. Not because he needs you. God doesn't need a thing. Like, here's a thought that hit me earlier today. Just follow along. If God needed the attention and the love of mankind, then hell would never, or creation, then hell would never be filled. Hell would remain empty forever. And yet there are people who are going to die who've never made the choice to honor God, to submit their lives to the lordship of Jesus Christ, who will one day go to hell forever. Why? Because God doesn't need you. God doesn't need me. God doesn't need any of us. But he has a deep, deep desire to love you and to be loved by you, to reestablish who you're created to be, to break the cycle, I almost said sickle, the cycle of sin in your life. That's his desire, so much so that he laid his life down on a cross to set you free, to set me free, to set the world free. That's the God that Nehemiah said, hey, look, I need to confess everything that's going on. Even though we're in a bad situation, God, and it's really easy to lie in a bad situation, that's the God that Nehemiah said, look, I've got to be honest in this bad situation. Because, God, I know you can do great things through this bad situation. So I pray that one day, maybe today would be the day, that if you've never made the choice to follow God, to give your life to Christ, that you'd make that choice. And if you don't know what that looks like, have a conversation with us. Look, I'm on one leg right now. I'm in an ankle brace. I can't play Frisbee that well. I'll talk to you afterward. And that's not why I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you because I love you. But, I mean, it'd be much smarter for me not to run around on this thing. We've got all these volunteers who are here who want to encourage you, who will pray with you. We even have students, as you've seen, who are sharing the gospel on their campuses, who are telling their friends about what it means to follow Jesus, or they're just simply inviting their friends to church because they say, hey, look, I don't have all the answers. Our pastor doesn't have all the answers, but he has time to Google a lot of things, so he'll figure out the answer for you. And if he can't, it's probably not out there. We have people who are here who will pray for you, who will encourage you, who will challenge you. We will disciple you. We'll walk with you through this process. So don't be afraid of making the choice today to say, look, God, I got to get real with you because you're the only hope that I'll ever have in my life. You're all that's worth pursuing.